Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today I've got a standard deck analysis for you guys. This time it's going to be on Mega Houndoom. Mega Houndoom being one of the new Mega Pokemon from Breakthrough, and my personal favourite just because Houndoom is my favourite Pokemon. A little bit of background information. So when the Houndoom was announced I was really happy that we were finally getting a Mega Houndoom in the TCG. So without further ado, we'll start with the normal Houndoom EX, 170 HP, pretty standard for EXs nowadays. First attack for a Fire Melting Horn, discard the top two cards of your opponent's deck. A really useful attack towards the late game, especially if your opponent's gone kinda hard and used a lot of their resources just to be able to knock out your Megas and your Houndooms earlier on in the game. If they've only got a few cards left, Melting Horn can actually mill them away, which is a lot of fun. And some people have been talking about Houndoom Mill in a concept itself, so that's going to be another deck analysis that we endeavour to do for you guys at some point, because it definitely seems like a fun deck that I at least want to try. And then the second attack for 2 fire, Grand Flame, only doing 50 damage, but you do get to attach a fire energy card from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. Doesn't have to be a fire Pokemon on your bench, just any basic fire. It doesn't say basic fire, but unfortunately the special burning energy is only considered a fire energy when it's attached to a fire Pokemon, so you can't get burning energies, which is really unfortunate. But you can still attach an extra energy per turn with Grand Flame, which is really cool. And Grand Flame also means that you can actually get 4 energy on turn 1 onto another Pokemon on the bench, including the 2 you attach to the Houndoom in the active position. So there's definitely combos you can pull off with Grand Flame, a really cool attack. And then Mega Houndoom, 210 HP, again, it's the lower half, or the lower side of the Megas for the most part, but still a decent number. And Inferno Fang for 2 fire, the same cost as its previous evolution, doing 80, and then if you discard all fire attached to Mega Houndoom, you do 80 more. So that's 160 for 2, which is really strong. Unfortunately missing out on the 180 mark, which knocks out EXs in one shot. But that is indeed why we've included a 2-2-1 backline. Relatively thin backline. There's different ways of playing Houndoom in my opinion. You can go for a thicker backline, taking out some of the other cards we've got in here, or you can go for a thinner backline, maybe a little bit more consistency, maybe a little bit more sort of techie. But yeah, we've gone for a 2-2-1 backline. The reason why we've gone for 2-2-1 is just basically to be able to still run a lot of these consistency cards, but get the sneaky bites when it's important, to be able to one-shot EXs when you really need to, because you actually only need 3 backdrops to kill 3 EXs from full HP. So you can do that and take all 6 prizes anyway, so you don't need a thicker backline in that regard. Unfortunately, obviously, sometimes some of your backline is going to be prized, things like that. But if you think about it, we're doing 50 with Grand Flame anyway, so sometimes we're not even going to need to do the extra damage. Sometimes not even discard with Inferno Fang just to knock out an EX. Inferno Fang can knock out a Shaman for 1 hit, even if you have to discard. You can still knock out a Shaman in 1 hit. So the bat, whilst you're not hitting 180 every turn, which some people may see as an issue, I don't feel it's that much of an issue, simply because we have Shaman in format. We have other ways of being able to deal damage early on, meaning that the bats aren't as you're not as reliant on the bats as one would sort of first think, to be able to always consistently hit 180. But we do also have a Giovanni scheme in here, which I'll get onto later, which again can do an extra 20 damage. So there are definitely ways to be able to clock this up to 180 if we need to, but it's not the end of the world if we can't, because nowadays there are so many Lysander targets. It's honestly sometimes fine not to take the 2 prizes on a big EX when you can take the 2 prizes on something else, and just sort of be a little bit more conservative. Speaking of other attackers and other things you can take prizes on, basic attackers are still fine for this deck to take prizes on, and our basic attacker for this deck at least is the Combat Blaze Entei. We need a basic attacker simply for Regice, because Regice will completely lock the deck down pretty much. Obviously we can hit with the bats if we need to, and we do run a Jirachi promo as well, which can be useful. But this way is this Entei is a really good counter to the Regice, because you can actually one hit a Regice if they've filled their bench, which is really useful. Only 2 energy as well, which means you can blacksmith onto the Entei to be able to one shot the Regice in a turn. No previous setup needed, which is really strong. Obviously Entei is weak to water, which is a bit of an issue, but again, because you can set it up in a turn, you can often hold it until you know you're going to get the knockout. But there are other ways for us to deal with the Regice as well, such as the new Jirachi promo, one of the best promos we've had in a long time. This and Tyrantrum are really good promos, which have been released lately. Stardust, this first attack doing 10 damage for 1 colourless energy. Discarding you may discard a special energy to your opponent's attach your opponent's active Pokemon. If you do, prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon. So we can get rid of DCEs off of the Regice if we really need to. That's another way around. We can sort of slow them down and hope that they actually miss one of their attacks for us to then come in with a Mega Houndoom or even a normal Houndoom, and just take the prizes from there. But again, we have other ways of being able to get around the Regice as well. It's not the end of the world if they do manage to get off one of their Resistance Blizzard attacks, because there are ways around dealing with this Regice. Pretty normal. We then have 2 Shaman EX just for this setup attack. You can Sky Return again, just because you're attaching one to the bench. Sometimes it's not a bad idea if you don't know where to attach, just to attach one Shaman to one to Shaman on the bench. So you can then just attach one and Sky Return back into your hand, just so it's not a Lysander target later on in the game. And finally, again, relatively standard, 1 Hooper. We're running a Mega deck, and pretty much most Mega decks will now run Hooper, just because Scoundrelling is so strong, letting your Ultra Balls basically search for 3 EXs rather than just 1. Such a fantastic ability, and definitely really useful in Mega decks, because you can get a lot of different pieces at once, which you may have initially sort of struggled with. Onto the trainers, we're running 2 Battle Compressor. Battle Compressor is really strong in this deck because we're also running Blacksmith, and then the Houndoom actually attaches fire from the bench anyway, from the discard anyway, to one of your bench. So you can throw a few fires into the discard quite happily, just to be able to then pick them back up later on with one of the few different cards we can get energy from the discard with. Also really good for setting up VS Seeker's turn 1 as well. If you have a VS Seeker and a Battle Compressor, that's pretty much any supporter in your deck that you can grab turn 1. Just because you can Battle Compressor it into the discard and then VS Seeker it back. A really good combo. I love using the Battle Compressor and VS Seeker sort of combo. It definitely makes decks more consistent if they can get away with running a Battle Compressor or 2. We're running 1 Escape Rope. Escape Rope is one of the ways we can get around Regice as well, because we can Escape Rope them out of the active and then Lysander them back in. That negates the effect of their attack, and therefore we can then actually use an EX to be able to knock them out, which is really strong. Escape Rope sort of letting us do plays like that, but also just in general, Escape Rope can sometimes be a really strong card, especially if your opponents deliberately sort of put something in the active to sort of avoid you taking prizes on something important on the bench. You don't even need to use your supporter for the turn to be able to take prizes on something that initially your opponent wouldn't have wanted you to take prizes on, which is really strong. So yeah, Escape Rope is definitely really important. And everything is, again, a relatively low retreat cost. The Hooper actually has the highest retreat cost in the deck. With the bats, you have free retreat, so often Escape Rope won't even be an issue for you, because you can just promote a bat with free retreat and then move back into whatever you want. So it kind of acts like a sort of pseudo Lysander without using your supporter for the turn. So yeah, Escape Rope is really strong. We've got 2 Level Ball. Level Ball, of course, searching the bats. It's definitely important to get the bats when you need them, because we're only running a thin line. But it also searches out Jirachi. The other thing to mention, of course, is Jirachi is really good against Toad Tina. Jirachi is one of the strongest cards we've got over the past few sets to be able to deal with Toad Tina with just 1 attack. Stardust is such a good attack. Really good with against Night March as well, because they can really struggle if you can get rid of a lot of their DCEs early on in the game, especially as a lot of Night March decks only run 4 DCE nowadays. So yeah, definitely a really strong card. and I definitely shouldn't have forgotten to mention how good it is against Toadina, because Toadina is a really popular deck at the moment. So Jirachi sort of is this deck's way of keeping that in check and being able to deal with that matchup relatively nicely. And thus it's really important to play a couple of level ball, just so on turn 1 we've got another 2 outs to be able to search for Jirachi preemptively if we're playing against Toadina, ready to be able to deal with any specials that they decide to attach, just so we can sort of start getting rid of their energy, much like they're going to do to us. The 2 Professor's Letter, again, really strong just for searching out energy just to attach for the turn, but likewise combos with Ultra Ball and then Blacksmith, so you can have an extra 2 attachments for the turn. Just searching out 2 energy with the Professor's Letter, dumping them both with Ultra Ball just to get a Pokemon of your choice, and then attaching them back with Blacksmith, really, really strong. We have 1 Super Rod, a couple of one-off Pokemon in here. Sometimes you have to get rid of the Jirachi or maybe the Crobat early that you wouldn't usually want to get rid of, so this way we've still got access to them later on in the game. And also sometimes, because you're only attaching 1 to the bench per turn, and sometimes Inferno Fang you will be discarding both, and it'll be difficult to get your energy back. Sometimes you may want to throw a couple of energy back into the deck, just late game, just to be able to, 1, avoid deck outs, because this is another 3 cards that you can put back into the deck to avoid any other sort of people playing Bunnelby or anything like that, just to avoid mill-based wins or losses. But also just so you have access to more energy later on in the game. So you've got access to 1 from Grand Flame, from the normal Houndoom, but then you've still got 1's energy in the deck, just so you can attach 2 energy a turn again. So Super Rod definitely has some real versatility. I'm so glad we got Super Rod back. I'd really missed it over the past few months that we haven't had it. So yeah, definitely happy that we've finally got Super Rod back. We have 4 Ultra Ball, again, pretty standard, really strong with Hooper, searching out so many EXs at once. I think Ultra Ball basically becomes one of the best cards in most Hooper decks now, most decks that play Hooper at least, just because you can search out so much just for one card, really, really strong. And then 4 VSC kit again, 3 or 4 is relatively standard in most decks nowadays, so nothing really untoward there. Onto the supporters, we have 1 AZ. AZ is really, really versatile. 1 for getting rid of Lysander targets on the bench on your side. Also, because we're playing a Crobat, we can pick up the Crobat line again, just for some more sort of bench snipes, things like that. Maybe we need 1 last snipe to be able to knock out a Pokemon with Inferno Fang. So yeah, AZ is really nice, and obviously you can still pick it up to be able to avoid being knocked out. Picking up the Pokemon will get rid of all of its damage, of course, meaning that you can sort of avoid your opponent taking big knockouts, which is really, really important. You also don't mind the energy going into the discard, because we can indeed Grand Flame them or Blacksmith them back in. We're running 2 copies of Blacksmith, just because Blacksmith is one of the ways where we can get a Houndoom set up in 1 turn. Technically 2 Houndoom set up at 1 turn. This is what you'd have to do is you'd have to have at least 1 Houndoom and another Pokemon on the bench. You could Blacksmith 2 on, providing there's 2 in the discard, to the Houndoom, attach 1 for turn to the other Pokemon, and then Grand Flame 1 from the discard onto the other Pokemon. So theoretically you can actually attach 4 energy in 1 turn with this deck, which is really, really strong, and can sort of turn the game around. If your opponent's taken out all of your energy, you can get 4 back on in 1 turn, which is really strong, especially against decks like Toadina and stuff that just always get rid of all of your energy, because a lot of the energy is coming from the discard. They can get rid of as much as they want, because you still have access to a lot of the energy just through Grand Flame and Blacksmith themselves. Yeah, really, really strong to be able to get your energy back, especially in sort of the Toadina format that we're in at the moment. We have 1 Giovanni Scheme. Again, the extra 20 damage is really, really useful. Sometimes even the drawing is really useful if you have nothing at all in hand and no access to other supporters. Drawing up to 5 isn't great, but it's better than nothing. So definitely a versatile card. More often than not, you're going to be using it for the extra 20 damage, just to go for 180 with Mega Houndoom. But at least you have the option there. There's no real reason not to use it if it's the only thing you can do. Yeah, definitely versatile, and sometimes you'll find use for the draw until you have 5. But like I say, mainly there for the extra 20 damage. Hex again pretty standard. Things like Vileplume can annoy us. Things like Aegislash, if it's quite annoying because Aegislash is weak to us, but if we have any burning energy on us, we can't actually knock them out. But things like Aegislash we can get through. Anything that has abilities. Turn 1 Hexmaniac is so strong, stopping your opponent from shaming, using Hooper as well. There's just so many sort of really strong abilities out there at the moment, and being able to Hex Maniac on turn 1 and sort of slow your opponent down is one of the most devastating things that can happen at the moment, just because there's so much sort of reliance on Shaman and bats and things like that. You've obviously just got to be vigilant that you make sure you can use your bats beforehand to get knockouts, just so you don't accidentally Hex Maniac yourself out of being able to get the knockout, but you will know how to do that anyway. 2 Lysander again, relatively standard. Nothing really to say here. And again, 1 Birch, relatively standard. I'm still unsure on the whole Birch Shauna debate. Sometimes Birch can be an absolute lad and get me 7 cards consistently. Sometimes he can be a bit of a pain and just get me 4. But I think on the whole, the difference between 4 and 5 isn't as bad as the sort of the advantage of having 7. I think the pro of having 7 is worth more than the con of only having 4 compared to 5. So I think Birch is still the right play at the moment. And finally, 4 Sycamore, again, much like VS Seeker, 3 or 4 is pretty standard in everything at the moment. So nothing untoward there. And then finally we have 2 Scorched Earth, 1 as a counter stadium, but 2 as another way to get fire into the discard, with the bonus addition of getting extra cards as you do it. Being able to discard your energy for another 2 cards is really strong, especially when you can then get that energy back in the same turn and attach it to one of your bench Pokemon. Definitely a really strong effect. And finally 3 Spirit Link, just so we can not waste our turn in evolving into Mega Houndoom. And energy wise, we're running 2 burning. I've only gone for 2 burning simply because Totina is still a thing. Energy denial still is a thing. A lot of people are playing 0-6 still. A lot of people are playing Enhanced Hammer still. And if we went in a 3 and 7 line, because we're running 8 basic fires, if we went to a 3 and 7 line, I think you'd be losing your energy a little bit more often than a 2 and 8 line, simply because it's a lot harder to get rid of. It's a lot easier to get rid of burnings rather than it is to get rid of normal energy. The burning is useful. You also don't need 2 on a Mega Houndoom just to really get full potential out of it. Even discarding 1 for 1 Zixity is completely fine. Obviously, if you don't have to discard any, it's great because you can just rely on attaching to other Pokemon. But even if you've just got 1 attached in a basic, you don't mind discarding that basic at all, just because 1 for 160 is crazy numbers, and you only need to attach 1 more energy next turn, which is not an issue at all, especially with this deck with Blacksmith and Grand Flame, things like that. You can definitely sort of retreat into the bench and just sort of set up another knockout with Grand Flame, or you have so much access to 1 energy just really quickly. It's not really an issue. You could go up to 3 and go down to 7 with the basics, but I think 2 and 8 is fine. I don't think the deck really relies on having a lot of burning, because the deck works without. Okay, so let's head onto the versus ladder to see what Mega Houndoom's like in practice. Let's see what we've got here. It looks like we're facing a dragon deck. Could be something like Speed Tina maybe. We unfortunately lose the coin flip. Don't know why I went for heads there. I always go for tails. Should have gone for tails. Oh well. I believe he's going to be going first. We do start with a Houndoom, which is pretty cool. And if it is a Tina deck, we do have the Jirachi in hand, which is definitely a really useful card. I'm tempted to even start with it, but I think it makes sense just to start with Houndoom and hold the Jirachi until we know exactly what we're dealing with, because then we can discard it with Ultra Ball if we need to. Okay, so we see a Hydreigon. probably a speed Tina deck with Reshurams. But it could be something like, okay, that's a darkness energy. Could it just be Hydreigon? He's gone for the Parallel City on the... I don't know which side that is. I think we're the red side, which means we're doing 20 less damage. So Grand Flame is actually only doing 30. And it's going to make it more difficult for us to be able to get the one shot. But it's not impossible. So we'll see what we can do here. He's going to touch the Muscle Band and then pass it over to us. I don't think the Jirachi is going to be useful, so I'm going to go for the Energy. Ultra Ball away. He has free retreat, so there's no point in Lysandering. So let's Ultra Ball away. Yeah, let's Ultra Ball away the Lysander and the Jirachi. Grabbing ourselves a Hooper. Let's just see what else is in the deck. We've only got one Shaman, that's worth remembering. And it seems that we've got all three of our line of Houndoom. So let's grab the Hooper. And indeed bench it and use Scoundrel Ring. I think I'll get a Houndoom, a Shaman. I could get a Mega Houndoom as well, but it's just going to be one less card. Yeah, look, I'll get a Mega Houndoom as well, just because we've already got the Spirit Link in hand. And let's attach these. I think I'm going to attach the Spirit Link to the benched one. Yeah, let's go for the Shaman. I don't think there's any real reason to do anything else before the Shaman here. We get a Level Ball, Sycamore, and a Blacksmith. So use the Level Ball and grab ourselves a Zubat. Let's just see what bat line we've got in here. Okay, we have got the 2-2. I believe I saw the Crobat as well, so should have the full 2-2-1 Crobat line. Let's bench the Zubat. I know we've got the Mega Houndoom in hand, but I think Sycamoring is fine here. So let's go for the Sycamore. We do indeed get an Ultra Ball for next turn, which is really useful. Okay, and then let's use Melting Horn just to discard a couple of cards from our opponent's deck. We got rid of a Parallel City, which is really good, and a Haxorus. So a Haxorus deck, this could be really interesting. He does get the Double Dragon and goes for Shred. So let's hope we can grab an energy here. We do actually get an energy, which is really, really important. Unfortunately, it's not a basic, which we would have been able to discard. But there may still be a way of being able to discard the energy. So yeah, let's attach the energy to the Houndoom. So we're going to be Grand Flaming for 30 here, which will take him down to 150. If we would then have to discard both our energy and get a little bit of extra damage. So I think going for the Golbat on the active Hydreigon just ensures the knockout next turn if we can get a Mega Houndoom set up, which hopefully we will be able to do. We are unfortunately going to have to discard our second Lysander as well, which is a bit of a pain, but oh well. Let's go for the Ultra Ball with an Ultra Ball and a Lysander. And let's pick up the Mega Houndoom and evolve on the bench. I'm then going to, unfortunately, I think it makes sense to Super Rod here, just so we can get one more card with the Shaman. I'm gonna VS Seeker and grab the AZ. Actually, should I grab the AZ or should I just go for the Sycamore? I might as well just go for the Sycamore. I'm going to get more cards this way. So let's grab the Sycamore. Super Rod in the... do we need... Oh, you have to take the Jirachi. I thought that was the case, but I wasn't going to take it if we didn't need it, but we do have to take it. It doesn't really matter. We can shove both of them in, and now we know he plays Double Dragon as well. Definitely could be useful at some point. And then let's go for the Sycamore, hopefully getting a way to discard one of our fires. Unfortunately we don't, so we're not going to be able to attach to the to one with Grand Flame to the Mega Houndoom this turn. Let's go for a level ball again. I'm gonna grab the other Zubat, or do we just go for the Jirachi here and hold the energy? Now let's go for the Zubat. Let's grab the Zubat because we've got the Golbat in hand already, so we can develop the Golbat next turn. And yeah, let's just go for the Grand Flame. Unfortunately, again, like I say, we're not going to be able to attach any, but that's okay. He'll be knocking us out next turn, but if we can, there is of course the Blacksmith in the discard, so we can Blacksmith and then just attach one from the hand to be able to knock out with Mega Houndoom next turn. We will have to discard both of the energy, but that's okay, because we've still actually only gone through 3 energy, the 2 on here that are just about to go, and then the 1 that we're going to discard. So yeah, we've still got 7 energy in the deck, so it doesn't matter too much that we've gone through quite a bit, what would seem like quite a bit of energy, because we've still got enough resources to be able to not worry too much. We'll promote the Golbat just so we have free retreat, and we get another Houndoom. That's certainly interesting. Gonna drop the Golbat and again go for the benched Hydreigon just because we're gonna be able to knock this one out anyway. Because we're gonna be doing 140 with Mega Houndoom. I think we should probably bench the other Houndoom as well. Let's go for the VS Seeker on the Blacksmith. And we'll use the Blacksmith, only getting 1, but that's okay because we have the other energy in hand. To attach to Mega Houndoom, attach the second, and what would be the best way of doing this? Let's retreat into the Mega Houndoom. I'm still not sure about the whole new layout changes. I don't know whether I'm happy with them or not yet. I think I quite like them, but there's certainly been a lot of controversial talk about whether people like them or not. Yeah, let's drop down at Houndoom again and just go for Inferno Fang, discarding all of the energy and taking out the Hydreigon for our first 2 prizes, picking up a Birch and our second Blacksmith, which is really cool, which means we can actually Blacksmith again next turn for another knockout, if we might have a way of being able to search for the Crobat as well. He indeed benches an Axew and then passes it over, which means he did not have the energy, which is really useful. Do we have a way of being able to pick up the Crobat? I can't see a way. I think we've gone through, yeah, we've gone through all 4 of our Ultra Balls, which is unfortunate. We may have to just do the 80 or the 60, sorry. I think that's fine though. Let's go for, yeah, let's go for Blacksmith. Grabbing both of them. We could even attach to the Houndoom on the bench. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's attach them both to the Houndoom. Then, gonna go for Professor's Letter. Grabbing 2 more energy. We will attach 1 to the active Houndoom. Pay retreat into the Houndoom on the bench, and go for a Grand Flame. Just so we can keep recycling our energy. I don't think there was any pro or con to doing that. It's just another way of being able to sort of keep damage off of this Mega Houndoom, since we haven't found our Spirit Link for this one yet. So this is going to sort of help us with avoiding damage on this Mega Houndoom, whilst still getting enough damage on the Hydreigon to be able to one-shot it next turn. We've still only got 1 fire in the discard as well, which is really, really good. We are going to have to probably retreat out of the active position with Houndoom, meaning that a couple will be going into the discard. Next turn, 4 will be in all, But again, like I say, we've still got Blacksmith and things like that, so it's not the end of the world. Well, we've still got VS Seekers to grab our Blacksmiths. And now Hydreigon is again in one-shot range like that other one was. Unfortunately, our opponent seems to have gone inactive, which is a shame, because I was really interested to see how this sort of Haxorus deck worked. But yeah, we'll definitely take that as the win. I feel I was in a pretty strong position anyway, because I was going to take another 2 prizes next turn. So yeah, I feel that was okay. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the Houndoom deck. I indeed love Houndoom, and I'm very happy we've got at least one that I think is pretty playable. I'll leave the full list in the description just so you can try it out for yourself. Let us know down in the comments how you like it, and stay tuned to the channel. We've got Joe's got another tournament report coming up in the next couple of days. I've got another couple of decks that I definitely want to test out, so hopefully there should be a good few videos over the next few days, so make sure you keep it here at Omnipoke for the latest new breakthrough deck, since breakthrough is now pretty much basically legal, since it's been the last weekend before that it wasn't legal. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more breakthrough decks and discussion about breakthrough decks coming up in the next few weeks. And if there's anything you would like us to try, let us know in a comment and we'll see what we can do. But yeah, I'm going to stop waffling now. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Omnipoke, and I will see you in another video.